The Black Hawk was dying. Cassidy Thornton fought the cyclic stick as the helicopter spun through the night sky. 24 years old, 6 months out of flight school. The RPG had punched through the tail boom. Hydraulic fluid sprayed across the windscreen. Every warning light screamed red. In the back, 4 Navy SEALs hung on as the bird corkscrewed toward the rocks. Cassidy pulled collective. The turbine screamed. The Black Hawk steadied for 3 seconds. Then the second RPG hit. The fuel tank cracked open. Jet fuel ignited instantly, turned the interior into a furnace. The helicopter dropped. Cassidy didn't scream. Night stalkers don't panic. They fly until they can't. She couldn't. The Black Hawk slammed into the mountainside at 70 knots. Metal shrieked. Rotor blades shattered. The airframe crumpled. Cassidy's head snapped forward. Blood filled her mouth. Her vision went gray, but she could hear the fire. Crackling, spreading, consuming. Her flight suit was burning. The sleeves melted into her forearms. The collar seared her neck. She unbuckled, kicked the jammed door open, fell out onto rocks rolling to smother the flames. Behind her, the Black Hawk was an inferno. Inside were 4 men who trusted her to bring them home. Cassidy Thornton stood up. She walked back into the fire. San Diego, California. Present day. Friday night. The Shattered Wing bar was packed with young Marines fresh from boot camp. Unit patches covered the walls. A faded Desert Storm flag hung behind the bar. In the back corner booth, Cassidy Thornton sat alone. 34, scarred. The kind of older that doesn't come from years, but from fire. The scar ran from her left ear to her jawline, thick, silvery pink. Her forearms were worse burn tissue that looked like melted wax wrist to elbow. She wore a flannel shirt buttoned to the wrist despite the San Diego heat. A glass of water sat in front of her. Not beer, not whiskey, water. 4 years, 2 months, 16 days sober. She stared at the glass and counted her breathing. 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 1, 2, 3, 4, exhale. The breathing exercises were supposed to help with the PTSD. They didn't work. Nothing worked, but she did them anyway because the alternative was screaming in public. The Shattered Wing was her last option. She'd been banned from 2 other bars already. Across the room, a group of drunk Marines got loud, 5 or 6 of them, early 20s. The loudest was a corporal with Wade on his name tape. Cassidy watched them the way veterans watch everything, cataloging threats. Harmless, she thought. Just kids. Wade noticed her. You'll check it out. Corner booth. Chick with the jacked up face. His friends looked, laughed. What happened to her boyfriend get mad? Maybe she fought a lawnmower and lost. Cassidy's jaw tightened. She traced the rim of her water glass. Wade grabbed his beer and stood. His friends followed. They walked toward her booth. Cassidy's hand moved to the heavy glass ashtray on the table. 2 pounds, solid ceramic. Her training calculated automatically. Distance, target, force. Probability of incapacitation, 93%. She'd been taught to think like this. SEER school, 3 weeks of hell designed to break you. She hadn't broken, but she wouldn't attack, not yet. Cassidy released the ashtray and placed her hands flat on the table. Wade reached the booth. Evening, sweetheart. You waiting for someone? Cassidy didn't look up. No. Just sitting here all alone, not even drinking. That's sad. I'm fine. Don't look fine. Wade studied her face. What happened? Motorcycle accident. His friend snickered. Cassidy raised her eyes. Gray, flat. Just leave me alone, Corporal. Oh, she speaks and knows rank. You military. Was. Wade tapped the table. What's with the long sleeves? It's 80 degrees. You hiding something? None of your business. I'm making it my business. People come here to relax, not look at... He gestured at her face. Whatever this is, you're killing the vibe. He grabbed her wrist. Cassidy pulled back, but not fast enough. Wade yanked. The sleeve rode up. The burn scars were revealed. Thick ridged tissue, pink and white and mottled. Wade recoiled like he'd touched something diseased. Gross. Man, that is nasty. His friends crowded closer. Dude, what the hell? That's disgusting. Wade shook his head. You really should stay home. Nobody wants to look at that while they're trying to have a beer. Cassidy pulled her sleeve down. Her hands shook. Not from fear, from memory. The smell of burning jet fuel. The screams. 4 men trapped in fire. Her skin melting as she dragged them out one by one. She'd earned these scars. Every inch was a medal she'd never been awarded. I asked you to leave, she said softly. Wade leaned in, and I asked you to leave first. Get out of here, Scarface. He shoved her shoulder. The therapist's voice echoed in Cassidy's mind. You're not in Afghanistan. You're not in danger. You don't have to fight. You have no idea what you're doing, Cassidy said. Wade laughed. I know exactly what I'm doing, taking out the trash. He grabbed a pitcher of beer from a nearby table, held it over Cassidy's head. Maybe this'll cool off those burns. He poured, The cold beer soaked through her hair, ran down her face, drenched her shirt. The smell of cheap alcohol mixed with the faint scent of jet fuel that never left her. Wade's friends high-fived. The bar went quiet. People stared. Some looked horrified. Most looked away. Cassidy sat there dripping, eyes closed. This was why she didn't go out. Why she stayed in her apartment with blackout curtains and white noise machines. Why she avoided crowds. Because this was what happened. Every time. Wade raised his hand to shove her again. The front door exploded open. 3 men walked in. Not boys. Men. They moved with quiet, terrifying purpose. The kind of movement that comes from 1,000 combat missions. The first one was massive. 6'4", 240 bearded. Black t-shirt stretched tight across his chest. Arms covered in military tattoos. Behind him 2 more. Leaner but equally dangerous. One had a scar across his throat. The other missing half an ear. They scanned the room like operators. Threats, exits, targets. Their eyes locked onto the scene in the corner. The woman covered in beer. The young punk laughing. The big one's face went pale. He walked toward the booth. The music stopped. Conversations died. The entire bar felt the shift. Wade turned grinning. What do you want, old man? The big man ignored him. He walked past Wade to the booth, looked at Cassidy, saw the scars on her face, the burned tissue on her forearms. His eyes filled with tears. Chief, he whispered. Cassidy looked up. Her eyes widened. Chief Thornton. Recognition crashed over her. Ox Wyatt, Ox Sterling, had been looking for Cassidy Thornton for 5 years. 5 years of dead ends. 5 years of VA hospitals and PTSD clinics. Now, here she was, soaked in beer, scarred, lone but alive. Wade stepped between them. You know this freak? Wyatt's eyes shifted to the young Marine. The look was colder than anything Wade had ever seen. What did you just call her? His voice was low, quiet, deadly. Wade tried to hold his ground. I called her a freak. Look at her face. She's disgusting. Wyatt didn't respond with words. He threw a right cross that traveled 8 inches. The punch landed on Wade's jaw with the sound of a baseball bat hitting meat. Wade dropped unconscious before he hit the floor. His friends jumped up. Hey, you can't. The other 2 men stepped forward, arms crossed, eyes flat. The young Marines understood suddenly they were children in a room full of wolves. They sat down. Wyatt turned away from the unconscious corporal. He pulled off his jacket and draped it around Cassidy's wet shoulders. I've been looking for you for 5 years, Blaze. Cassidy stared at him, at the beard, the lines around his eyes, the trident tattoo. How did you find me? Anonymous tip. Someone recognized you from an old unit photo. One of Wade's friends found courage. Who the hell are you guys? Wyatt rolled up his sleeve. The tattoo eagle anchor pistol. The trident, Navy SEAL. We are the men she saved. The bar went silent. Wyatt pointed to the man with the throat scar. Holden Reeves, 10 years ago pinned under a seat when our bird went down. Unconscious, drowning in his own blood. She pulled him out while she was on fire. He pointed to the man missing part of his ear. Quinn Marshall, unconscious, not breathing. She dragged him 20 meters, gave him CPR, brought him back. Wyatt tapped his chest. Wyatt Sterling, broken back, couldn't move. She walked back into that burning helicopter 3 times. Once for Holden, once for Quinn, once for me. He pointed at Cassidy's scar. She got that when the fuel tank exploded. She was shielding our team leader with her own body. His voice cracked. The blast killed him. She took the fire to her face, arms, chest. 70% burns. He turned to Wade on the floor. And this piece of garbage poured beer on her. The young Marine stared at Cassidy now, not with disgust, with awe. We didn't know, one whispered. Cassidy found her voice, stronger now. You didn't ask. Holden and Quinn sat across from her. Wyatt stood guard. After you pulled us out, you collapsed, Holden said, his voice rough. Medevac to Bagram, then Ramstein, then Brook Burn Unit. 2 years. Cassidy nodded. She remembered. The surgeries, the skin grafts, the morphine that stopped working. When you got out, you disappeared, Quinn added. Medically retired at 26. No forwarding address. I didn't want to be found. We know, Wyatt sat beside her, but we needed to find you anyway, to say thank you. He pulled out a photograph, worn from handling. 4 Navy SEALs next to a Black Hawk. In the pilot's seat, barely visible, a woman. 24, blonde, no scars yet. 3 hours before we went wheels up, Wyatt said, before everything went to hell. Cassidy didn't recognize herself. There was a 5th man, the team leader. I couldn't get him out. Lieutenant James Caldwell. KIA, Quinn said. You did everything you could, more than anyone else would have. Wade groaned, waking up. Cassidy stood, walked to where he sat, hand on his swollen jaw. She crouched down, pulled up her sleeve, revealing the full extent of her scars. Take a good look, Corporal. These aren't ugly. This is what love looks like, what loyalty looks like. She paused. I hope you never have to earn marks like these. But if you do, I hope no one treats you the way you treated me tonight. Wade looked at her, at the massive SEALs behind her like guardian angels. He started to cry, not from pain, from shame. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. No, you didn't. Wade managed to stand, looked at her, at the scars. He snapped to attention. Saluted. Ma'am, Corporal Brennan Wade. My father was Marine Corporal James Wade, killed in Desert Storm, 1991. I was 2. He lowered his salute. I never knew what sacrifice meant, but now I do. He extended his hand. Cassidy shook it. Get ice on that jaw, Corporal. Yes, ma'am. He turned to leave, stopped. Ma'am, you're the bravest person I've ever met. Cassidy nodded. Brennan and his friends left quietly. Wyatt gestured to the booth. Sit with us. Before Cassidy could respond, the door opened. An older man walked in. 67, gray-haired, slight limp, ribbon bar on his chest, Medal of Honor. Bronze Star, Purple Heart. He walked straight to their booth. Lieutenant Thornton, I've been looking for you too. Cassidy stood. Colonel Blackwell. Just Garrett now. He smiled. Though I see you've had quite the reunion. Wyatt shook his hand. Sir, we weren't expecting you. Heard Thornton had been spotted. Figured tonight might be interesting. He looked at Cassidy. Looks like I was right. Cassidy's mind reeled. Wyatt and the team, now her old flight instructor. What's going on? Garrett sat. Sit, all of you. Wyatt's phone buzzed. His face went pale. What is it? Wyatt showed the message. Urgent search and rescue. Devil's Canyon, civilian down. With all pilots grounded. Need immediate response. Garrett looked at Cassidy. That canyon, you know it. Cassidy's hands started shaking. I flew it 50 times in training, before Afghanistan, before the crash. There's an 8-year-old boy trapped on a ledge, 50-knot winds, 0 visibility. Every civilian pilot refused to fly. He paused. We need the angel of death back in the cockpit. Cassidy looked at her trembling hands, at the scars, at the 3 men who'd named their children after her, at the old colonel who'd taught her to fly. I haven't flown in 10 years. I know, but that kid is dying, and you're the only one who can save him. Outside, thunder rumbled. The storm was coming. Cassidy Thornton had a choice to make. Cassidy's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She stared at them there on the table, fingers trembling like leaves in a storm. 10 years since she'd touched a cyclic stick. 10 years since she'd felt rotor wash on her face. 10 years since she'd been anything other than broken. The message on Wyatt's phone might as well have been written in fire. Devil's Canyon. She knew that canyon. Every wind shear, every downdraft, every thermal that could flip a helicopter upside down in 3 seconds. She'd trained there back when she was 23, fresh and fearless, and convinced she was immortal. Afghanistan had taught her otherwise. The bar around them had gone quiet. Even the drunks at the pool table had stopped playing, sensing that something important was happening in the back booth, something that mattered more than their Friday night. I can't, Cassidy said. The words felt like broken glass in her throat. Garrett Blackwell didn't move, just sat there with his hands folded on the table, watching her with those steady gray eyes. The same eyes that had watched her solo for the first time. The same eyes that had signed her flight certification when she was 22 and thought she could conquer the world. The same eyes that had visited her in the burn unit at Brooke Army Medical Center and told her she'd never fly again. You can, he said simply. My medical discharge specifically states I'm permanently grounded, unfit for duty. The FAA revoked my license. I'm not even legally allowed to. I know what it states. I wrote half of it. Garrett leaned forward. His voice was low, calm, the voice of a man who'd made impossible decisions and lived with the consequences. That boy doesn't care about paperwork, Thornton. He cares about breathing. And right now he's got maybe 2 hours before hypothermia takes him. Maybe less. Wyatt's phone buzzed again. He looked at the screen and his jaw tightened. The blue light from the display made his face look haunted. Update from ground team, he said. They're launching a rescue party. 6 climbers, best in the county. Estimated arrival time to the canyon floor is 6 hours minimum. Weather's getting worse. They might not make it at all. By then, Holden started. By then he's dead, Quinn finished. His damaged voice made the words sound even more final. Holden stood up his chair, scraping against the wooden floor. We should go. Even if we can't fly, maybe we can rappel down from the rim. We've done worse. In 50-knot winds? Garrett shook his head. You'd be blown off the cliff face before you got halfway down. I've seen it happen. Good men experienced climbers turned into lawn darts because they thought they could beat the wind. This needs a helicopter, and it needs someone who knows how to fly it in conditions that would kill anyone else. He looked at Cassidy. His eyes weren't just steady. They were knowing, understanding. The eyes of someone who'd been exactly where she was now. It needs you. Cassidy closed her eyes. She could see it already playing out like a movie in her mind. The canyon walls rising on either side, dark and wet and hungry. The helicopter bucking in the wind like a wild animal. Her hands on the controls fighting physics and gravity, and the screaming voice in her head that said she wasn't good enough, wasn't ready, wasn't whole. The voice that said she'd fail again. The voice that said more people would burn because of her. Why me? She whispered. There have to be other pilots. Military pilots from the base. Coast Guard pilots with actual experience in what mountain rescue? Garrett interrupted. You think there's anyone on this coast who knows Devil's Canyon like you do? You flew that canyon 53 times, Thornton. I know, I signed your training logs. You flew it in rain, in fog, in Santa Ana winds that should have killed you. You flew it backwards once just to prove you could. Cassidy opened her eyes. That was 10 years ago. I was 23. I was fearless, Garrett finished. Is that what you were going to say? That you were fearless back then and now you're not? He leaned back in his chair. The wood creaked under his weight. Let me tell you something about fear, Thornton. Fear doesn't make you weak. Fear makes you smart. The fearless ones are the ones who get killed. The ones who think they're invincible, who take stupid risks because they don't understand consequences. You understand consequences now. You've paid for them in skin and blood and nightmares. He tapped the table with one finger. That doesn't make you broken. That makes you dangerous because now you know exactly what you're risking. And you can make the choice with your eyes open. The bar was completely silent now. Even the jukebox had stopped playing. Wyatt spoke softly. 5 years ago, I got out. Terminal Lance Corporal, 28 years old, had enough of the military life. Moved to Virginia Beach. Got married to a woman I met at a coffee shop. Had kids. Started living like a normal person. He looked at Cassidy with eyes that had seen too much and somehow still held hope. But I couldn't let it go. Couldn't stop thinking about that night in the mountains. About you walking into fire while you were on fire. About the fact that you saved my life and disappeared before I could even say thank you. Before I could tell you what it meant. His voice cracked slightly. My daughter is 5 years old. Her name is Cassidy Sterling. Every night before she goes to bed, I tell her a story. Not about princesses or fairy tales. I tell her about the angel who flew into hell so her daddy could come home. I tell her about courage and sacrifice and what it means to be a hero. He pulled out his wallet, removed that worn piece of paper, the drawing and crayon that he'd shown her earlier. But this time he unfolded it completely. There were more stick figures than Cassidy had seen before. A whole family, a mother, 2 children, a house with a tree. At the bottom, in careful child handwriting, my daddy is alive because of the angel. Thank you, angel. My daughter made this 3 months ago, Wyatt said. When she found out I was looking for you, she wanted you to know that she exists because you were willing to burn. He placed the drawing on the table. That little girl has your name, Thornton. She has your courage in her DNA because I tell her every day what real bravery looks like. My son, he's 3. When he's old enough to understand, I'll tell him too, about the woman who taught his father what it means to never quit. Cassidy felt something break inside her chest. Not a bad break, the kind of break that lets pressure out, the kind that lets you breathe again after holding your breath for a decade. Quinn cleared his throat. The scar tissue made it sound rough, painful. I tracked down every Night Stalker unit, every VA hospital, every PTSD clinic from here to Maine. Spent 3 years searching. Used every contact I had, called in favors. Spent money I didn't have. He looked at his hands. They were scarred too, though not as badly as Cassidy's. I found 17 women named Cassidy in the VA system. Visited 12 of them in person. Every time hoping it was you. Every time disappointed when it wasn't. My wife thought I was obsessed. Maybe I was. But I needed to find you. Needed to tell you that I'm alive because you wouldn't quit. Holden's damaged voice added, we all needed to find you because someone who'd do what you did doesn't deserve to disappear. They deserve to know what they saved, what they gave the world. Cassidy stared at the drawing on the table, at the stick figure family that existed because she'd walked into fire. I'm scared, she said. The admission felt like pulling out a knife that had been buried in her chest for 10 years. Good, Garrett replied. His voice was firm but not harsh. Fear keeps you sharp. It's the fearless ones who get killed. I was fearless in 91, thought I was invincible. Flew into that sandstorm like I owned the Scotty, and I paid for it. He gestured to his leg. Shattered femur, destroyed knee, 6 months in a hospital bed. Another 6 in physical therapy. They said I'd never walk without a cane. Said I'd definitely never fly again. Said a lot of things that turned out to be wrong. He leaned forward again. You know what changed. What made the difference between staying broken and getting back in the cockpit? Cassidy shook her head. The Rangers I crashed with. They visited me. Every week. Sometimes twice a week. They brought their families, their kids. One of them brought his newborn daughter, 6 pounds, born 3 weeks early. He told me she wouldn't exist if I hadn't gotten them out of that desert. If I hadn't kept flying when every warning light was screaming at me to set it down. Garrett's eyes were wet now. That baby girl is 34 years old now. She's a doctor, saving lives in Baltimore. She exists because I didn't quit. And I didn't quit because those Rangers showed me what I'd saved, what my broken body had protected. He reached across the table and put his hand over Cassidy's scarred fingers. Scars don't make you broken, Thornton. They make you expensive. Every inch of damaged tissue is a price you paid for something that mattered. The question isn't whether you're whole. The question is whether you're willing to pay that price again. Across the bar, the door opened. Brennan Wade walked back in. His jaw was still swollen, turning a spectacular purple yellow that would take weeks to fade. His left eye was nearly shut. But he was walking steady, sober. His eyes were clear. He'd found ice somewhere, and coffee, and something that looked like dignity. He walked straight to the booth, stood at attention. Ma'am, he said to Cassidy, I know I don't have any right to ask this. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I need you to understand something before you make your decision. He reached into his pocket and pulled out that dog tag. Old, worn, the metal dull with age and handling. My father, Corporal James Wade, died in Desert Storm. January 17th, 1991. I was 2 years old. I don't remember him at all. Don't remember his voice or his face, except from photographs. He placed the dog tag on the table with reverence. My mother told me he died in a training accident. Quick, painless. She didn't want me to grow up knowing the truth. Didn't want me to have nightmares about how he really died. Brennan's voice cracked. 3 years ago, I joined the Marines. Wanted to be like him, wanted to make him proud. And tonight, after you and these men left, I called my mother. Woke her up at midnight, demanded she tell me the truth about how my father died. He took a breath. He burned to death in a Humvee fire, trying to pull out 3 other Marines who were trapped. The vehicle had hit an IED. The fuel tank ruptured. My father could have run, could have saved himself. But he went back in, 3 times, just like you did. Tears were running down Brennan's face now, but he didn't wipe them away. He got 2 of them out. The third one, he couldn't reach. The vehicle exploded. My father and that Marine both died. He looked at Cassidy. I joined the Marines to be like him, to be brave like I thought he was. But tonight I realized I don't know what brave actually means. I thought it was about being tough, about not showing weakness, about mocking people who are different. He gestured to his swollen jaw. You taught me different, ma'am. You showed me that brave isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and doing it anyway. It's about paying prices that nobody else can pay. It's about walking into fire when every instinct says run. He straightened even more if that was possible. So if you're going up in that storm, I'm asking you to let me come. Let me do something that would make my father proud. Let me learn what real courage looks like. And if I die doing it, at least I'll die being the kind of man he was. the kind of man you are. Garrett studied the young Marine for a long moment. You ever flown combat rescue, son? No, sir. You ever rappelled from a helicopter in high winds? No, sir. You ever done technical rope work, cliff rescue, any kind of vertical environment training? No, sir. You ever seen a man die because someone made a mistake at altitude? Brennan hesitated. No, sir. Then why should we bring you? You're untrained, inexperienced. You'll be dead weight, might get yourself killed, might get all of us killed. Brennan's jaw tightened. Because I need to learn, sir. And because if something goes wrong, I'd rather die trying to save a kid than live knowing I was too scared to help. Too scared to be the man my father was. Wyatt and Garrett exchanged a look. Something passed between them. Understanding, recognition. Garrett nodded slowly. You got a ride to the airfield, he asked. Oh, yes, sir. My truck's outside. Then you're in, but you follow orders without question. You do exactly what Chief Thornton says, when she says it, how she says it. No hesitation. No second guessing. And if she tells you to jump out mid-flight, you jump. Understood? Yes, sir. Good. Now sit down and shut up while the adults talk. Brennan sat. Wyatt's phone buzzed again. He looked at the message and his face changed, went pale. His hand tightened on the phone. What? Garrett asked sharply. Ground team just sent an update on the kid. Wyatt turned the phone so everyone could see. It was a photo. A boy in a hospital bed. Older photo judging by the date stamp. Maybe 2 years old. The boy was bald, thin, too thin, connected to IV lines. His skin had that translucent quality that came from long illness. Ethan Sawyer, Wyatt said quietly, 8 years old, leukemia survivor. He's been in remission for 18 months. This hiking trip was his first real adventure since treatment ended. First time his doctors cleared him for any kind of physical activity. Cassidy stared at the photo, at the brave smile on a face that had known too much pain for such a young age. A kid who'd already fought for his life once, already beaten odds that killed other children, already learned what it meant to be strong when your body was trying to quit. And now he was trapped on a ledge in a storm, fighting for his life again. There's more, Wyatt continued scrolling through the message. His father is a Marine Corps veteran, Sergeant First Class David Sawyer, served 3 tours. Last one was Afghanistan, Hindu Kush region, 2014. He paused. Let that sink in. Same mountains where you crashed, Chief. Same deployment window. Different company, but he was there. He was in those mountains when you went down. The same war that had burned her. The same rocks that had broken her helicopter. The same sky that had tried to kill her. Small world, Garrett said softly. But his eyes were sharp, understanding. He knew what this meant to Cassidy. Cassidy looked at the photo of Ethan, at the brave smile on a face that had known too much pain, at the determination in eyes that should have held nothing but childhood innocence. She thought about herself at 8 years old, healthy, whole, innocent, playing in her backyard in Texas, dreaming about flying helicopters because her father had been a pilot. She thought about who she'd become, what she'd survived, what she'd paid. She thought about that little boy on a ledge, cold and scared, and fighting not to give up. A fighter, just like her. That kid's already a fighter, she said. Her voice was stronger now, steadier. He's already beaten cancer, already won a fight that kills most people who face it. He's stronger than half the Marines I've known. She looked at Wyatt, at Holden, at Quinn, at Garrett, at Brennan. Let's make sure he gets to keep fighting. Garrett turned to Cassidy. It's your call, Thornton, but we need to move. Now. Every minute we waste is another minute that kid gets colder. Another minute closer to the point of no return. Cassidy looked at the faces around the table. Wyatt, who'd named his children after her. Holden, whose scarred throat bore witness to that night in the mountains. Quinn, who'd died and been brought back by her hands, her breath, her refusal to quit. Brennan, desperate to prove himself worthy of a father he never knew. And Garrett, the old warrior who'd taught her everything and refused to let her stay broken. She thought about the bond on that ledge. 8 years old, cancer survivor. Scared, cold. Crying for parents who couldn't reach him. She thought about herself at 8 years old, before the fire, before the scars, before she learned that heroes weren't invincible. Before she learned that being a hero meant being willing to burn. She stood up. Let's go save a kid. The Coronado Naval Air Station was 26 miles from the shattered wing. The posted speed limit varied between 35 and 65 depending on the road. Garrett made it in 16 minutes. He drove like he flew, fast, aggressive, utterly confident. His truck was an old Ford F-250 diesel built in 2003 before computers ran everything. No emissions controls, no stability assist, just raw power and torque and the kind of mechanical simplicity that could take abuse and keep running. It roared through San Diego like a tank at full charge. Cassidy sat in the passenger seat, gripping the oh shit handle above the door. The streets blurred past. Traffic lights went from yellow to red to distant memories. "You know you're going to get pulled over," she said, "by who every cop in the county is on the search and rescue. And if they do stop us, I'll tell them we're on our way to save a kid. They'll give us an escort." He downshifted and the diesel engine bellowed as they took a corner at 50. "You still drive like you fly," Cassidy said. "Damn right." Garrett shifted back to fifth and the truck surged forward. Fast and terrifying. "It's worked for 40 years. Why change now?" "Because eventually physics wins. Physics has been trying to kill me since 1972. I'm still here. Physics can go to hell." Despite everything, despite the fear and the doubt and the weight of what she was about to do, Cassidy almost smiled. In the bed of the truck, Wyatt, Holden, Quinn, and Brennan held on as Garrett took corners at speeds that violated both traffic laws and the laws of physics. They hit the airfield in 16 minutes. The guard at the gate saw Garrett's truck coming and made the smart decision. He didn't ask for ID, didn't ask questions. Just hit the button to raise the barrier and wave them through. Either he recognized the old colonel, or he was too smart to argue with 2.5 tons of diesel truck doing 60 toward a closed gate. Smart man. The helicopter was on the tarmac, rotors tied down, looking small and fragile against the dark sky. The storm was visible now, lightning flickering in the distance, wind beginning to pick up. It was a Sikorsky UH-60M Blackhawk. The M stood for Mike variant. Newer than the Lima model Cassidy had crashed. Better avionics, better engines, better everything. But a helicopter was a helicopter. Sheet metal and turbines and physics that didn't care about upgrades or new paint, and gravity. Gravity treated them all the same. Standing next to the bird was a man in a flight suit, late 40s, balding with the slight paunch that came from desk duty and too many years between combat deployments. He had the look of someone who'd made a decision and hated himself for it, but knew it was right. Captain Rodriguez, the pilot who'd refused to fly. He saw Garrett's truck pull up and his expression darkened. Defensive. Angry. "Colonel Blackwell, with all due respect, I already told them no. The conditions are—" "I know the conditions," Garrett interrupted, climbing out of the truck. "That's why I brought it someone better." Cassidy stepped out of the passenger side. Rodriguez looked at her, at the scars on her face visible even in the dim tarmac lighting, at the flannel shirt that still smelled like cheap beer and humiliation, at the hands that trembled slightly as they hung at her sides. "Who's this?" Not unkind, just confused. "Chief Warrant Officer 3 Cassidy Thornton, retired, former 160th SOAR, Night Stalkers." Rodriguez's eyes widened. Whatever he'd been expecting, it wasn't that. Night Stalkers. He looked at Cassidy again, reassessing. "Ma'am, I didn't realize. But even so, the conditions out there are beyond anything I've seen. I've been flying for 20 years. Iraq, Afghanistan. I've done rescues in weather that grounded everyone else. But this," he gestured toward the storm. "Those winds are gusting to 60 knots. The canyon walls create a Venturi effect that'll flip anything with rotors. The visibility is zero. The kid is on a ledge barely wide enough to stand on. One mistake and we all die. This is a suicide mission." Cassidy walked past him toward the helicopter. The familiar shape, the familiar lines. Home. Rodriguez caught up to her. "Ma'am, please. I need you to understand. I have a wife, 2 kids. They're 8 and 6. If I die out there, they grow up without a father. I won't do that to them." Cassidy stopped, turned to face him. "What's the kid's name?" she asked. Rodriguez blinked. "What? The kid, on the ledge. What's his name? Ethan? Ethan Sawyer. He's 8 years old." "How'd he end up there?" "Hiking with his dad, celebrating the end of cancer treatment. Kid's been fighting leukemia for 2 years. Just got cleared by his doctors. This was supposed to be a victory hike. Then he slipped on wet rocks, fell about 40 feet, landed on a ledge. His dad called it in but can't get to him. The cliff face is too steep, too wet." Cassidy nodded slowly. "And the weather window. Closing fast. We've got maybe 90 minutes before the storm gets worse. After that, nothing flies until tomorrow morning at the earliest. Maybe longer if the system stalls." "Ethan won't last until tomorrow." "I know." Rodriguez looked away. Believe me, I know, but I can't fly it. I'm good, Captain Rodriguez. I've been flying for 20 years. I've flown in conditions that grounded everyone else. I've done things in a helicopter that most pilots wouldn't attempt. But this is beyond skill. This is luck. And luck runs out. It always runs out. Cassidy looked at him, really looked, saw the guilt in his eyes, the shame, the desperate hope that someone would tell him he'd made the right choice. I understand, she said simply. Do you really? Because right now there's a kid dying on a mountain and I'm standing here safe because I'm too scared to. You made the right call for yourself, Cassidy interrupted. You have a family. You have people who need you to come home. You made the smart decision, the responsible decision. She pulled up her sleeve, showed him the scars, the melted tissue, the skin grafts, the permanent damage. I died once already, she said. 70% burns, 2 years in a hospital. The doctors said I wouldn't survive. Said even if I did, I'd never walk again. Never use my hands. Never have any kind of normal life. She pulled the sleeve back down. They were wrong about the walking, wrong about the hands, but they were right about normal. I'll never be normal. I'll never have what you have. A wife, kids, a future that doesn't include nightmares and flashbacks and the smell of burning jet fuel every time I close my eyes. She looked at the helicopter. So yeah, maybe this is luck. Maybe it's skill. Maybe it's something else entirely. But that kid on the ledge doesn't care about philosophy. He cares about someone coming to get him. And I'm someone who doesn't have anything left to lose. Rodriguez stared at her. You're going to get yourself killed. Probably, but at least I'll die doing something that matters. She walked to the helicopter and opened the pilot's door. The cockpit smelled exactly like she remembered. Hydraulic fluid and old leather and the faint metallic tang of electronics and fear. The instrument panel glowed softly in the darkness, familiar and foreign at the same time. The cyclic stick stood vertical between the seats, waiting for a hand that knew how to use it. Waiting for her. Cassidy climbed in. She sat in the pilot's seat for the first time in 10 years. The seat was wrong, adjusted for someone taller. She reached down and pulled the lever, sliding it forward until her feet reached the pedals. Her hands found the controls like they'd never left. Collective on the left, cyclic in the middle, pedals under her feet, anti-torque control, power management, instrument scan. She closed her eyes, the muscle memory came flooding back. Not just the technical knowledge, though, that was there, but the feel, the understanding that a helicopter wasn't a machine you operated. It was a living thing you partnered with. You asked it to fly. It asked you to be worthy, a covenant written in physics and faith. She opened her eyes. Garrett was standing outside the door. He was holding something, a flight helmet, old, battered, desert tan paint flaking off like old skin. This is from my bird, he said, the one I crashed in '91. I kept it all these years, told myself I was saving it as a reminder, but I think I was really saving it for this, for you. He held it out. It's seen me through hell, Thornton, kept my brains inside my skull when they should have been splattered across a rocky sand. Maybe it'll do the same for you. Cassidy took the helmet. It was heavier than modern ones. No fancy electronics, no integrated communications. Just Kevlar and padding and the name Blackwell stenciled on the back in faded letters. And below that, in smaller letters, a motto, death before dishonor. She put it on. It fit perfectly. Wyatt appeared at the door, followed by Holden and Quinn. They were already geared up. Tactical vests loaded with climbing equipment, rescue harnesses, medical supplies, rope, carabiners, everything they'd need to get a terrified 80-year-old off a ledge in the middle of a storm. We're going with you, Wyatt said. Not a question, a statement of fact. This isn't a combat mission, Cassidy replied, running through the instrument check. Every mission is a combat mission when the enemy is physics. He climbed into the cabin. Besides, you pulled me out once. Figured I owe you a ride. Time to pay my debts. Holden and Quinn followed. They strapped into the jump seats with the efficiency of men who'd done this 1,000 times. Their hands moved automatically, checking equipment, testing connections. Warriors. Brennan came last. He looked nervous, excited, terrified. All at once, his swollen jaw made him look younger somehow, more vulnerable. Ma'am, he started. Strap in, Marine, Cassidy said, not looking up from the instrument panel. And don't throw up in my bird. I just met her, and I'd like us to stay friends. Yes, ma'am. They secured themselves in the car seats. 5 men in the back of a helicopter that was designed to carry 11 fully equipped soldiers. They had room, they had weight allowance. What they didn't have was certainty. Cassidy ran through the pre-flight checklist. Most of it was automatic muscle memory taking over where conscious thought left off. Fuel full, hydraulics nominal, electrical green, instruments operational, engines ready. Everything showed green. But she knew better than to trust green lights. Green lights had been on in Afghanistan too. Right up until the moment the RPG turned them all red. She reached for the starter. Her hand was shaking again. Garrett leaned in through the door. His voice was quiet, gentle. "You remember what I told you on your first solo flight?" Cassidy nodded. How could she forget? She'd been terrified that day too. 22 years old, convinced she was going to kill herself. "The helicopter doesn't care if you're scared," she recited. "It only cares if you're committed. Fear is just information. What you do with that information is what defines you." "That's right," Garrett smiled. "So are you committed?" Cassidy looked at the instruments, at the controls that had once felt like extensions of her own body, at the 4 men in back who trusted her enough to strap into a machine that might kill them all. She thought about Ethan Sawyer, 8 years old, cancer survivor, alone on a ledge in the dark, wondering if anyone was coming. She thought about herself, 34 years old, burn survivor, alone in a bar until tonight, wondering if anyone cared. Both of them waiting for someone to come, both of them fighting to survive. "I'm committed," she said. She hit the starter. The APU spooled up first, auxiliary power unit, the heartbeat that would wake the sleeping giant. It whined and caught and settled into a steady hum. Then the turbines. Number 1 engine. The whine built slowly at first, then faster, climbing the scale like a siren reaching for the sky. The rotor shaft engaged. The blades began to turn, slow at first, then fast enough to blur into a disc overhead. Number 2 engine, the same song and harmony, power building, potential becoming kinetic. The Black Hawk came alive beneath her. Cassidy felt it through the seat, through the controls, through the helmet that had seen one war and was about to see another, through her bones. The aircraft trembled, ready, waiting, asking the question it always asked. "Are you worthy?" She keyed the radio. "Coronado Tower, this is Night Stalker 77, requesting immediate departure for Devil's Canyon rescue operation." There was a pause, static. Then a voice came back, older, authoritative, someone who'd been doing this long enough to know when to follow rules and when to burn them. "Night Stalker 77 Tower, be advised weather is below minimums for VFR flight. IFR is not recommended. Current conditions include gusting winds, low visibility, and severe turbulence. We cannot authorize this departure." "Understood, Tower. Departing anyway." Another pause, longer this time. "Roger that, 77. The controller's voice changed, became almost gentle. "Godspeed, bring that kid home." "Wilco, Night Stalker 77 is wheels up." Cassidy pulled collective. The Black Hawk lifted off the tarmac. The wheels left the ground and suddenly they were flying, rising into the dark sky, into the wind and rain and storm that had grounded everyone else, into the chaos that sane people avoided. But Cassidy Thornton had stopped being sane 10 years ago. She'd stopped being sane the moment she walked back into fire. Rodriguez stood on the ground watching them go. His face was a mixture of awe and horror, and something that might have been envy. Garrett stood next to him, hands in his pockets, looking up. His face was serene, confident. The helicopter banked hard to the northeast, toward the mountains, toward Devil's Canyon, toward a little boy who needed someone crazy enough to trade oak. Inside the cockpit, Cassidy fought the controls as the wind tried to shove them sideways. The first gust hit like a punch from God. The helicopter rolled 15 degrees before she caught it. "Welcome back," she muttered to herself. The rain was already hammering the windscreen. Visibility was maybe a quarter mile, maybe less. The wipers fought a losing battle against the deluge. Behind her, Brennan was gripping his harness so hard his knuckles were white. His face was pale green. Wyatt leaned forward. "How you doing, Chief?" Cassidy didn't answer right away. She was too busy correcting for a gust that tried to roll them inverted. The helicopter bucked like an angry bull, dropped 50 feet in 2 seconds, caught air again. She pulled it level with movements that were more instinct than thought. "I'm doing what I was trained to do," she finally said, "which is fly into places no sane person would go." Wyatt smiled. "Then we're in exactly the right hands." The Black Hawk screamed toward the mountains at 140 knots. Full cruise speed, maybe a little more. The airframe shuddered with the effort. Behind them, the lights of San Diego disappeared into the rain, the civilized world falling away, leaving only darkness and wind and the mountains that didn't care if you were brave or scared or anything in between. They just were. Ancient, indifferent, eternal. Ahead there was only darkness, and somewhere in that darkness a boy was waiting. Cassidy Thornton had spent 10 years running from fire. Tonight she was flying straight back into it. The helicopter shook like a paint mixer as they climbed toward the canyon. Every gust was a fist trying to knock them out of the sky. Every downdraft was a trap waiting to slam them into the mountains. Every crosswind was a challenge to her control, her skill, her right to be here. Cassidy's hands moved constantly on the controls. Tiny adjustments. Corrections measured in inches. Left, right, up, down. The helicopter wasn't flying so much as fighting its way through the air. In the back, Holden was checking the rescue equipment for the third time. Rope, harness, carabiners, medical supplies. Everything they'd need to get a terrified 8-year-old off a ledge in the middle of a storm. Quinn was on the radio coordinating with the ground team, getting updates on Ethan's condition. Still conscious, still responsive, but fading. Body temperature dropping, time running out. Brennan just held on and tried not to look out the window. Or throw up, preferably both. The GPS showed Devil's Canyon 5 miles ahead, 4 minutes at current speed, 4 minutes to decide if this was bravery or stupidity. Cassidy keyed the intercom. 2 minutes to target. Everyone ready? Aja. A chorus of affirmatives came back. Calm, professional. The voices of men who'd done this before, who understood the risks and chose to take them anyway. She dropped altitude, skimming the treetops. Flying low kept them out of the worst winds aloft. It also meant one mistake would put them into the ground at terminal velocity. No pressure. The canyon appeared ahead like a black wound in the earth, a scar in the landscape. Deep, dark, hungry, just like her. Cassidy took a breath. Entering the canyon. Hold on. She nosed the helicopter forward and flew into the darkness, into the storm, into the unknown. The walls rose up on either side, sheer rock faces that looked like teeth in the storm. The Venturi effect hit immediately. The wind funneled through the narrow space and accelerated. 70 knots, 80, 90. The Black Hawk was thrown sideways like a toy. Cassidy compensated, flew at an angle, crabbed into the wind to maintain forward progress. It was a maneuver that shouldn't work. The physics said it was impossible. The textbooks said it couldn't be done. But Cassidy Thornton had stopped caring about textbooks 10 years ago. She flew the canyon sideways, the fuselage pointed 40 degrees off their direction of travel, fighting every second to stay airborne. Fighting every second to prove she was worthy. Fighting every second to bring that kid home. There, Wyatt shouted. Ledge at 2 o'clock. I see him. Cassidy looked. Through the rain and darkness, she could just make out a small figure huddled against the rock wall. Ethan Sawyer, 8 years old. Soaking wet, terrified, still alive, still waiting. Cassidy brought the helicopter into a hover. The hardest thing a pilot can do, and she held it there. Steady, unwavering, ready. Quinn Marshall dropped into hell. The fast rope burned through his gloves as he descended. The wind slammed him against the cliff face once, twice, 3 times. Rocks scraped his helmet. His tactical vest took impacts that would leave bruises for weeks. He didn't stop. 20 feet down, 30, 40. The ledge appeared below him, barely 6 feet wide, slick with rain and crumbling at the edges. And huddled against the rock wall, shaking like a leaf, was Ethan Sawyer. The boy looked up as Quinn's boots hit the ledge. His face was pale. His lips were blue. Hypothermia had already started its work. His small hands were pressed against the rock fingernails, torn from trying to grip the whetstone. Hey, buddy, Quinn shouted over the rotor wash. I'm Quinn. I'm here to take you home. Ethan didn't move, just stared with eyes too wide, too scared, eyes that had seen cancer wards and chemotherapy and things no 8-year-old should know. But not this, not a cliff in a storm with death waiting below. Quinn knelt down, making himself smaller, less threatening. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But that helicopter up there, that pilot is the best there is. She's going to get us out of here, I promise. I want my dad, Ethan whispered. His voice was so small it almost disappeared in the wind. I know, he's waiting for you. He sent us to get you. Your dad was a Marine, right? Ethan nodded. Then you know Marines don't quit. And we're not quitting on you, but first we need to get you in this harness. Quinn pulled the rescue harness from his belt. small size. Designed for kids. The bright yellow webbing stood out against the dark rock. He reached for Ethan. The boy flinched back, too close to the edge. Quinn's heart stopped as Ethan's heels slipped on the wet rock. Loose stones tumbled over the edge, disappearing into the darkness below. He lunged forward, grabbed the kid's jacket, pulled him away from the drop. "Easy," Quinn said, holding the trembling boy. "Easy. I've got you. You're safe now." Ethan was crying, silent tears mixing with the rain on his face. "I fell," he sobbed. "I didn't mean to. Dad said stay close, and I didn't listen, and I fell. Hey, look at me." Quinn waited until Ethan's eyes met his. "Accidents happen. What matters is that you held on. You stayed on this ledge for 3 hours. That takes guts. Your dad is going to be so proud of you." Above them, the Black Hawk bucked in the wind. Inside the cockpit, Cassidy was fighting a losing battle with physics. The helicopter wanted to drift right. The wind wanted to push them into the cliff. The downdrafts wanted to slam them into the rocks below. Cassidy wanted none of it. Her left hand worked the collective constantly. Up, down, tiny movements measured in millimeters. Her right hand on the cyclic made corrections so fast they were almost invisible. Her feet on the pedals kept the tail rotor from spinning them into the canyon wall. Sweat poured down her face inside the helmet. It ran into her eyes, blurred her vision. She blinked it away. The scars on her forearms ached. Old nerve damage responding to stress. The tissue that had been burned and grafted didn't have the same nerve endings. Sometimes she couldn't feel her hands properly. Sometimes she felt everything too much. Right now she felt everything. Every vibration, every gust, every warning that screamed this was impossible. She ignored it all. In the back, Wyatt watched the fuel gauge tick down. They'd been hovering for 3 minutes. Each minute burned fuel they couldn't spare. Each second brought them closer to the moment when they'd have to choose between the mission and survival. "How much longer?" Holden asked, his damaged voice barely audible over the turbines. "As long as it takes," Wyatt replied. "We don't leave without that kid." Brennan was watching Quinn work on the ledge below. The young Marine's face was pressed against the window, his breath fogging the glass. He was praying, first time in years, but he was praying. "Please, God, let them make it. Let this kid see his father again. Let me do something right." "He's got the kid in the harness," Brennan said. "They're clipping in." "Good," Wyatt keyed the intercom. "Chief, they're ready to come up." "Copy," Cassidy replied. Her voice was strained, tight, but controlled. "Prepare to hoist." Holden moved to the winch controls. On the ledge, Quinn finished securing Ethan. The boy was strapped to his chest in a tandem configuration. Quinn's arms wrapped around him, protective, the way his own father had held him when he was young. "Okay, buddy, here's what's going to happen," Quinn said, making sure Ethan could hear him. "We're going to go up to that helicopter. It's going to be loud and scary. The wind is going to push us around. But I want you to close your eyes and think about your dad. Think about telling him about this adventure. Can you do that?" Ethan nodded against Quinn's chest. "Good. Close your eyes now. Don't look down. Just hold on to me." Ethan buried his face in Quinn's tactical vest. Quinn clipped onto the hoist cable, checked it twice, checked Ethan's harness 3 times. He gave the thumbs up. Holden hit the switch. The winch motor engaged with a mechanical whine. The cable pulled taut. Quinn and Ethan lifted off the ledge. For a moment, they hung in space, between the rock and the helicopter, between death and salvation. They rose 10 feet, 20. The wind caught them, spinning them like a mobile. 30 feet. Then the downdraft hit. It came from nowhere. A column of air dropping through the canyon like the fist of an angry god. The kind of atmospheric phenomenon that flips small aircraft and kills pilots who don't see it coming. Cassidy saw it coming. Not on instruments, on instinct. The way the rain changed angle. The way the rotor noise shifted pitch. She had half a second. The Black Hawk fell, 50 feet in 2 seconds. Cassidy's stomach lurched into her throat. The horizon tilted. Every alarm in the cockpit started screaming. Master caution, rotor RPM low, hydraulic pressure dropping, oil pressure warning, engine overheat, a symphony of dying systems. She pulled collective, full power. Both turbines screamed in protest. The helicopter stopped falling. But Quinn and Ethan were still on the cable, swinging wildly in the wind, penduluming toward the canyon wall at terminal velocity. "Holden, get them up," Wyatt shouted. Holden's hands flew over the controls. Winches jammed. Cables caught on something. "Override it." Trying. Below them, Quinn saw the rock wall coming, saw the jagged outcropping that was about to crush them both. He twisted his body, turning so his back would take the impact, curled around Ethan like a human shield. They hit. The impact drove the air from Quinn's lungs. Something in his shoulder cracked. Ribs maybe, or his collarbone. Pain exploded through his back. But Ethan was protected. They bounced off the wall, spinning. Quinn kept his arms locked around the boy. They hit again. Quinn's helmet cracked against raw rock. His vision doubled. But he held on. "Quinn," Wyatt's voice in his ear. "Talk to me." "Still here," Quinn gasped. "Kid's okay. Get us up." In the cockpit, Cassidy saw the hydraulic pressure gauge drop into the red. The memory tried to take her. Afghanistan, 10 years ago, same gauge, same warning. Same sick certainty that everyone was about to die in fire. But she'd learned something in 10 years. Memories were just that, memories. This was now, and now she was in control. "Holden," Cassidy said. Her voice was ice, calm, the voice of someone who'd been to hell and knew the way out. "Status. Cables fouled on an outcropping. Can't pull them up without tearing the cable. Can't lower them without slamming them into the wall again. Can you see what it's caught on?" "Negative, too much spray." The Black Hawk shuddered. The controls went mushy in her hands. Hydraulic failure. She was flying on cables now, pure mechanical linkage between her hands and the rotor head. Every input took twice the force. The helicopter responded half as fast, like flying a truck with no power steering. While hovering next to a cliff, with 2 men on a cable, in a storm. Cassidy looked at the fuel gauge. 4 minutes at this power setting. She looked at the hydraulic gauge. 0 pressure. She looked at Quinn and Ethan swinging in the wind below, and she made a choice. "Brennan," she said. The young Marine looked up, fear in his eyes, but also hope. "Ma'am, you said you wanted to do something that would make your father proud." "Yes, ma'am." "Clip into the secondary cable. Go down and unfoul the primary." Brennan's face went pale. "Ma'am, I know. But Quinn can't do it with the kid attached. Holden and Wyatt need to stay on the winch. That leaves you." She turned in her seat and looked at him. Really looked at him. "Your father died trying to save his squad. You have his blood, his courage. I've seen it tonight. Now I'm asking you to use it." Brennan stared at her, at the scars on her face, at the determination in her eyes that said she believed in him more than he believed in himself. He thought about Corporal James Wade, 23 years old, burned alive pulling his Marines from a burning vehicle. A hero Brennan had never met but had spent his whole life trying to honor. This was his moment. "Yes, ma'am," Brennan said. His hands were steady as he clipped into the secondary cable. Wyatt appeared next to him. The big SEAL's face was serious. "Listen to me," Wyatt said. "When you get down there, you're going to be scared. You're going to want to rush. Don't. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. Cut the fouled section. Don't think, just do." He handed Brennan a knife, K-bar, heavy, sharp. "This knife has been in 3 wars. It's never failed. It won't fail you." Brennan took the knife, felt the weight of it, the history. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just bring Quinn and that kid home." Brennan nodded. He moved to the door. The wind hit him like a living thing, tried to rip him out of the helicopter. He looked down, 100 feet to darkness, to rocks that would shatter every bone in his body. He looked at Quinn, at the 8-year-old boy who'd already fought cancer and now was fighting for his life again. He thought about his father, and he stepped out into the storm. The fast rope slipped through his hands. He caught it, gripped harder. His gloves were soaked. The rope was wet. He was falling too fast. Training kicked in, wrapped the rope, controlled the descent. The wind hit him sideways, spun him 360. His stomach lurched. "Don't throw up. Don't you dare throw up." He descended, 20 feet, 30, 40. Quinn appeared below him, blood running down the side of the SEAL's face from where his helmet had cracked. But his arms were still locked around Ethan, still protecting the kid. "'Bout time, jarhead," Quinn shouted. Brennan almost smiled. He reached the fouled section. The cable was wrapped around a jagged piece of rock twice, pulled tight by the combined weight of Quinn and Ethan. 400 pounds of tension on wet nylon. If he cut it wrong, the cable would snap like a whip, could take his head off, or worse, send Quinn and Ethan falling. He pulled out the knife. His hands were shaking. He looked at Quinn. The SEAL gave him a nod. Trust, confidence. Brennan took a breath. "Get it together. Dad didn't shake. Chief Thornton doesn't shake. You don't get to shake." He gripped the knife handle and started sawing at the cable wrapped around the rock. Not the main cable, just the wrapped section. The blade bit into the nylon fibers. One strand parted. Two. Three. The wind tried to tear the knife from his grip. He held on. Four strands. Five. In the cockpit, Cassidy felt the helicopter starting to drift right. The hydraulics were completely gone. She was flying on pure muscle. Every movement of the controls took all the strength in her arms. Her forearms were screaming. The damaged tissue where the skin grafts were didn't have the same strength. She could feel them tearing. Blood probably seeping under the scars. She didn't care. This kid was going home. How much longer? She asked. Almost there, Wyatt replied, watching Brennan work. The young Marine cut through another strand. 6, 7, one more. The knife was getting dull. The wet nylon was tough. He sawed harder. The last strand resisted. Come on, come on, it parted. The cable sprang free. Quinn and Ethan dropped 6 feet, then jerked to a stop as the slack pulled tight. Cable's clear, Holden shouted. Hoisting! The winch engaged. Quinn and Ethan began to rise. Brennan hung on his own cable, watching them go up. Relief flooding through him. I did it. Dad, I did it. Then he looked down and saw the knife tumbling end over end into the darkness below, and realized he was still clipped to a cable that wasn't attached to a winch. And he was 40 feet from the helicopter with no way to climb a wet rope. He said into his radio, I might have a problem. In the cockpit, Cassidy keyed her mic. What kind of problem? The kind where I'm hanging on a cable and I don't know how to get back up. Wyatt looked at Holden. Can we pull 2 cables at once? Not with the winch. We'd have to do it manually. How much does he weigh? 180 with gear. Wyatt looked at Quinn. You're injured. I can pull with one arm. Then we pull. Quinn and Ethan reached the door. Wyatt grabbed them, hauled them inside. Ethan was shaking, crying, but alive. Quinn's shoulder was definitely dislocated, hanging at an odd angle. Sit tight, kid, Wyatt said to Ethan. We're getting you home. He and Holden moved to Brennan's cable. They secured Ethan in a jump seat first, wrapped him in an emergency blanket. The boy watched them with wide eyes. Then Wyatt and Holden grabbed Brennan's cable. Even Quinn injured as he was grabbed on with his good arm. They pulled, hand over hand, 180 pounds of Marine Plus gear. Dead weight on a wet rope, they pulled. Brennan rose, inch by inch. His arms were wrapped around the cable, his legs too, climbing as much as being pulled. 10 feet, 20. In the cockpit, Cassidy felt the helicopter starting to sink. The power was fading. The turbines were overheating from sustained high output. The needles on the temperature gauges were in the red. Engine failure was imminent, and they were still in the canyon. If the engines quit now, they'd all die. How much longer? She asked. 30 seconds. Wyatt grunted, hauling on the cable. His massive arms burned. Holden's damaged throat was making breathing difficult. Quinn was pulling one-handed with a dislocated shoulder. But they didn't stop. 25 seconds. Cassidy looked at the fuel gauge. The needle was touching E. She keyed the radio. Ground team, this is Night Stalker 7-7. We have the package coming out hot. Copy 7-7. What's your fuel state? Fumes and prayers. Clear the pattern. We're coming in dead stick if these engines quit. 20 seconds. The left engine temperature gauge hit the red line. An alarm sounded. 15 seconds. Brennan was 10 feet below the door. Wyatt reached down. Come on. Marine reach. Brennan stretched. His fingers caught Wyatt's wrist. Wyatt pulled. Brennan's boots hit the deck. We're clear, Wyatt shouted. Cassidy didn't respond with words. She pulled collective, full power, everything the dying helicopter had left. Both engines screamed, metal grinding, temperature gauges pegged. The Black Hawk climbed, not forward, not sideways, straight up, like a rocket. The turbines screamed a mechanical shriek that sounded like the end of the world. The airframe shook so violently Cassidy's teeth rattled. She held the collective against the stop, held the cyclic centered, prayed. The helicopter rose. The canyon walls flashed past, 100 feet, 200, 300. The rim appeared. They cleared it. Open sky. Cassidy pushed the nose forward and dove. Traded altitude for airspeed. Let gravity do what the engines couldn't. The Black Hawk accelerated out of the canyon like a bat out of hell. Behind them, the storm raged. Ahead, the lights of San Diego beckoned. Cassidy pointed the helicopter toward home. In the back, Ethan Sawyer was wrapped in a blanket. Quinn had his good arm around the boy. Wyatt was checking everyone for injuries. Holden was on the radio with the ground team. Brennan sat against the bulkhead shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline crash. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. Saved a life. Like his father. Cassidy's voice came over the intercom. Calm, steady, like she'd just finished a training flight instead of defying death. Coronado Tower Night Stalker 77. 5 souls on board, 1 civilian rescue, requesting priority landing. Roger 77, you're cleared direct. Emergency equipment standing by Mama. Fire trucks, ambulances, the whole show. Negative on emergency equipment. We're coming in clean. There was a pause. The tower controller's voice came back incredulous. 77, your hydraulics are reading 0. Your fuel is critical. Both engines are overheating. We're scrambling. Tower, I said we're coming in clean. I don't need the show. Just clear the runway and get the medics ready for the kid. Another pause. Then Wilco 77. The controller's voice was filled with awe. You Night Stalkers really are crazy. That's why they pay us the big bucks. Cassidy flew the crippled helicopter across San Diego like she was taking a Sunday cruise. No drama, no panic, just smooth controlled flight. She descended through the pattern, set up for landing. The engines were dying, she could feel it. The power fading, the turbines winding down. She had one shot at this. 15 minutes later, she brought it into the airfield. Gear down, approach angle perfect. Airspeed right on the numbers. The skids touched concrete so gently it felt like landing on a cloud. The rotors spun down. The turbines wound to silence. Both engines quit simultaneously the second the weight settled on the skids. If she'd been 10 seconds later, they would have dropped from the sky. But she wasn't. Cassidy sat in the cockpit and didn't move. Her hands were still on the controls, her feet on the pedals, her eyes staring straight ahead at nothing. She'd done it, flown into the storm, faced the downdraft that still haunted her nightmares, brought everyone home alive. The scars on her face were wet, not from rain, from tears. 10 years of pain, 10 years of hiding, 10 years of believing she was nothing but broken pieces held together by scar tissue, all of it pouring out in silent tears that no one could see behind the helmet visor. She'd been wrong. She wasn't broken. She was a survivor. And survivors don't quit. The pilot's door opened. Garrett Blackwell stood there. The old colonel's eyes were wet too. He didn't say anything. Just reached in and put his hand on her shoulder. Welcome home, Chief. Cassidy finally let go of the controls. Her hands were cramping, locked in position from gripping so hard for so long. The scars on her forearms were bleeding, dark patches spreading on her sleeves. Garrett helped her unbuckle, helped her climb down from the cockpit. Her legs almost gave out when her boots hit the tarmac. Garrett caught her, held her steady. Easy. You've been holding tension for 25 minutes straight. Your muscles need a minute. Cassidy nodded. She pulled off the helmet. Her hair was soaked with sweat, her face pale. Is everyone okay? She asked. Everyone's alive because of you. Around them, people were gathering. Paramedics rushed to the helicopter. They pulled Ethan Sawyer out gently. The boy was conscious, alert, scared but alive, wrapped in the emergency blanket like a small, shivering burrito. They loaded him onto a stretcher, and running across the tarmac faster than any man his age should be able to run was David Sawyer. Ethan, oh God, Ethan. The paramedics saw him coming, saw the desperation on his face. They stopped, let him through. Father and son crashed into each other's arms. David was sobbing, shaking, holding his boy like he'd never let go, like if he squeezed hard enough, he could keep death from ever touching him again. Dad, Ethan said, crying into his father's shoulder. Dad, I fell. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Shh, buddy, shh, you're okay, you're safe now. David pulled back, looked at his son's face, checked him for injuries with a father's frantic hands. Are you hurt? Did they hurt you? No, the Navy man protected me. And the pilot, Dad, the pilot was so cool, she flew in the storm. David looked over at Cassidy. She was standing next to the helicopter, barely able to hold herself upright, scarred and exhausted and covered in blood from where her forearms had torn open. And the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. He walked over, still holding Ethan. Ma'am, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Sergeant First Class David Sawyer, United States Marine Corps, retired. Cassidy nodded. Your son is very brave, Sergeant. He held on for 3 hours. Most adults wouldn't have lasted that long. He's brave because he has examples to look up to. David straightened as much as he could while holding Ethan. Ma'am, I need you to know something. Afghanistan 2014. Hindu Kush region. I was there. Different company, but I heard about the Black Hawk crash. About the pilot who walked into fire. He paused, emotion choking his words. I always wondered what happened to that pilot, where she ended up, if she was okay. He reached into his pocket with his free hand, pulled out a patch. Marine Corps, Afghanistan deployment, 2014, worn at the edges from being carried for 10 years. Now I know, she became a hero again. He pressed the patch into Cassidy's scarred hand. Thank you for bringing my boy home. Thank you for showing him what real courage looks like. Cassidy looked at the patch, at the father holding his son, at the second chance she'd just given them both. Get him to the hospital, Sergeant. He needs to be checked out. Yes, ma'am. David started to turn, then stopped. Ma'am, one more thing. Ethan's been in remission for 18 months, leukemia. This hike was supposed to be a celebration, a new beginning. He looked at his son, at the boy who'd fought cancer and won. You gave us that new beginning. However many years we get them because of you. He saluted. Cassidy returned it. Semper Fi, Marine. Semper Fi. David jogged back to the ambulance. They loaded Ethan inside. The boy's face appeared in the rear window as the doors closed. He waved. Cassidy waved back. The ambulance pulled away, lights flashing, carrying a little boy home to a future he wouldn't have had without her. More people were arriving now. Coast Guard, Navy personnel, off-duty Marines who'd heard what happened on the radio, news crews setting up cameras, reporters already shouting questions. And walking through all of them slowly but with purpose came Brennan Wade. His face was bruised from the bar, his jaw still swollen. His uniform was soaked and torn from the cable. His hands were rope-burned and bleeding. But he was walking tall. He was carrying something wrapped in plastic. He'd taken it from his car in the parking lot. An American flag, folded in a perfect triangle. The flag that had draped his father's coffin. He walked straight to Cassidy. The crowd parted. Sensing something important was about to happen, Brennan stopped 3 feet in front of her and dropped to one knee on the wet tarmac. Every conversation stopped. Every person turned to watch. Brennan unwrapped the flag, held it up with both hands. The fabric was faded, 23 years old, but sacred. Ma'am, he said, his voice carried across the silent airfield. Chief Warrant Officer Cassidy Thornton. 6 hours ago, I was the worst Marine who ever wore the uniform. I mocked you, humiliated you, poured beer on you. His voice broke. I was cruel. I was wrong. I was everything my father would have been ashamed of. He looked up at her. But you showed me grace. When you could have destroyed me, you showed me mercy. When you could have left me behind, you gave me a chance to be better. Tears ran down his bruised face. Tonight I went down a cable in a storm. I cut a fouled line. I helped save a little boy's life. I did something my father would have been proud of. He lifted the flag higher. This flag covered my father's coffin. Corporal James Wade, killed in action, Desert Storm 1991. It's the most precious thing I own, and I want you to have it. Cassidy's breath caught. Brennan, I can't. Please, ma'am, you've earned more honors than all of us combined. The government won't give you the medals you deserve. So I'm giving you this. My father died a hero. You've lived as one. You deserve to carry his memory. The crowd was silent, waiting. Cassidy looked at the young Marine kneeling before her, at the flag that represented a sacrifice made before Brennan could even remember his father. She thought about grace, about second chances, about how the best thing you can do for someone is believe in them when they don't believe in themselves. She took the flag. Get up, Marine, she said softly. You honor your father, not by giving away his memory, but by living the values he died for. You did that tonight. Brennan stood. Ma'am, you're the bravest person I've ever met. You're what I want to be. Cassidy smiled despite the exhaustion, despite the pain, despite everything. You're already halfway there. Behind Brennan, the other Marines from the bar were arriving. The ones who'd laughed, the ones who'd watched, the ones who'd learned what a hero really looked like. They walked onto the tarmac in formation. One by one, they came to attention and saluted. Not the casual salute of everyday military life. The slow, deliberate salute reserved for the fallen, for heroes. Cassidy stood there holding the flag as dozens of young warriors paid their respects. Wyatt Holden and Quinn climbed out of the helicopter. Quinn's shoulder was in a makeshift sling. Holden was holding his ribs. Wyatt was limping. But they formed up. 3 Navy SEALs standing at attention, saluting the woman who'd saved their lives a decade ago and taught them what sacrifice meant. Garrett Blackwell, 67 years old, his body broken by war, snapped a salute that would have made the commandant proud. Even Captain Rodriguez, the pilot who'd refused to fly, stood at attention with his hand to his brow. His face showed shame and awe in equal measure. Cassidy didn't know what to do. She was in active duty, technically couldn't return the salute. So she did the only thing that made sense. She touched the scar on her face, the ugly, twisted tissue that had defined her for 10 years. And she said three words that would echo across every military base in America by morning. It's just skin. The crowd erupted, not polite applause, not respectful appreciation, wild, thunderous, soul-shaking celebration that echoed across the airfield and into the night sky. Someone started chanting, "Angel, angel, angel." Others picked it up, young and old, active duty and retired. Every person who understood what it meant to pay the price. The chant became a roar. Wyatt walked over, grinning despite his limp. "Permission to carry you off this field, Chief." Cassidy was too tired to argue. "Granted." Wyatt, Holden, and Quinn lifted Katie onto their shoulders. They carried her across the tarmac. The scarred woman who'd been mocked and humiliated just hours ago now elevated above everyone else. Brennan walked beside them, carrying both flags, his father's and the one Cassidy had earned. The crowd parted to let them through. News cameras caught it all. The image would be on every screen by morning. The woman with scars. The warriors who carried her. The young Marine who'd found redemption. The chant continued. "Angel, angel, angel." Cassidy closed her eyes and let herself feel it. The acceptance, the recognition, the understanding that she wasn't broken. Had never been broken. She was expensive. Every scar was a price paid. Every mark was a medal earned in fire and blood and sacrifice. And she'd earned the right to hold her head high. 3 hours later, the shattered wing was quieter now, after midnight. The Friday crowd had thinned to a handful of regulars nursing last call. Cassidy walked in wearing clean clothes, a borrowed Navy sweatshirt, her hair still damp from the shower at the airfield, the scars on her face and arms visible in the dim light. The bartender looked up. A woman in her 50s, gray hair, pulled back tattoo of a helicopter on her forearm. Name tag said Maggie. "We're about to close, hon." She stopped, recognized Cassidy. "Holy shit, you're her, the pilot from tonight." News travels fast. "News, honey, you're all over every channel. The video of you landing that bird with no hydraulics already has 5 million views. You're a goddamn legend." Maggie came around the bar. "I'm Maggie. I own this place. Former crew chief, Army Aviation, Desert Storm." "Cassidy." "I know who you are." Maggie poured 2 shots of whiskey, slid one to Cassidy. "This one's on the house for being the baddest woman in San Diego. Hell in America." Cassidy looked at the shot. "I don't drink. You do tonight. Trust me. Some things deserve to be toasted." Cassidy picked up the glass, stared at the amber liquid. She thought about 10 years of sobriety, 10 years of control, 10 years of being afraid that one drink would send her spiraling. She thought about tonight, about letting go, about flying into the storm anyway. One drink wouldn't break her. Nothing could break her anymore. She drank. The whiskey burned. Good burn, clean burn, not like jet fuel, never like jet fuel again. Maggie raised her own glass. "To the angel of death, may she always bring people home." They drank. The door opened. Captain Rodriguez walked in, the pilot who'd refused to fly. He looked exhausted, humbled, 10 years older than he had that afternoon. He walked to the bar and sat 2 stools down from Cassidy. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "For what?" "For not flying, for being too scared. For," he stopped, looked at his hands, "for not being you." Cassidy shook her head. "You made the right call for yourself. You have a family, kids who need their father. You made the smart decision. And you made the brave one. I made the only one I could live with." Cassidy looked at him. "There's no shame in knowing your limits, Captain. You'll fly another day, save other lives. I just don't have limits anymore. I already died once. Everything after that is borrowed time." Rodriguez smiled sadly. "I watched you land. Watched you fly a crippled bird like it was nothing. I've been flying for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like it. You will. Keep flying long enough, you see everything." "Will I see you again?" "At the airfield," Cassidy thought about it. "Maybe, if someone needs the angel of death." Rodriguez extended his hand. "It was an honor to watch you work, Chief." Cassidy shook it. "Fly safe, Captain." He left. The door opened again. This time it was a flood. Marines, SEALs, Coast Guard, off-duty personnel who'd heard about the rescue and wanted to meet the pilot who'd defied death. They poured into the bar, and they surrounded Cassidy, not threatening, celebrating. Maggie laughed and started pouring drinks. Someone started the chant again. Angel, angel, angel. The small bar shook with the sound of it. Wyatt pushed through the crowd. He had something in his hands. A bag. Thought you might need this, he said. He pulled out a leather flight jacket, brown, worn smooth by years of use. Patches on the shoulders. 160th SOAR, Night Stalkers. We saved your old jacket, Wyatt said. From 10 years ago before the crash. It was in storage at Fort Campbell. I had them ship it. Figured you might want it back. Cassidy took it with trembling hands. Her old call sign was stitched on the breast in gold thread. Blaze. She put it on. It fit like it had never left. The crowd erupted in cheers. A young Marine Corporal Cassidy didn't recognize pushed forward. Ma'am, can I ask you something? Sure. How did you do it? How did you fly with no hydraulics? That's supposed to be impossible. Cassidy smiled. Nothing's impossible. It's just expensive. You have to ask yourself if you're willing to pay the price. She held up her scarred forearms. I paid it a long time ago. Tonight I just collected. The Marine nodded understanding. More questions came. More stories. The crowd pressed close. Cassidy Thornton, who'd walked into this bar 6 hours ago as an outcast, was now surrounded by people who saw her for what she really was. A hero. Not despite the scars. Because of them. 6 months later. Fort Rucker, Alabama. Army Aviation Center of Excellence. The classroom was full of young pilots. Fresh-faced, eager, most of them barely old enough to drink. At the front of the room stood Cassidy Thornton. She wore her uniform. Night Stalker patch proud on her shoulder. Instructor tab above it. Sleeves short. The scars were visible. She'd stopped hiding them. Brennan Wade sat in the front row taking notes. He'd transferred from the Marines to Army Aviation. Had a conditional acceptance to Night Stalker selection pending his completion of flight school. The hardest decision you'll ever make, Cassidy said writing on the board, is choosing when to fly and when to walk away. There's no shame in either choice, only in lying to yourself about which one you're making. She wrote acceptable risk. 6 months ago, I flew into Devil's Canyon in conditions that had grounded every other pilot in California. 60-knot winds, zero visibility, hydraulic failure mid-mission. By every metric, it was suicide. She turned to face the class. I made that flight because an 8-year-old boy needed someone crazy enough to try. I made it because 3 Navy SEALs I owe my life to were willing to ride with me. I made it because a young Marine who'd made a mistake asked for a second chance. She looked at each student. That's what being a Night Stalker means. You fly the missions no one else will fly. You pay the prices no one else can pay. You give people second chances and hope they give you one back. The door at the back opened. Colonel Garrett Blackwell walked in. Behind him, Wyatt Sterling in civilian clothes. Behind him, a man in a Marine dress uniform. David Sawyer, Ethan's father, and holding his hand 8 years old and grinning was Ethan himself. Cassidy smiled. Class, we have some guests. Let me introduce you to the reason why we do what we do. Ethan ran to the front of the room. Chief Cassidy. He hugged her. She knelt down. Hey, buddy, how are you doing? Good. Dad says I can start baseball next month. My hair grew back. See? He turned, showing off his full head of hair. Looks good. David stepped forward. Ma'am, we were in the area. Wanted to stop by and say thank you again. You already thanked me. I'll thank you every day for the rest of my life if I have to. He looked at his son, at the miracle standing there because someone had been brave enough to try. Ethan starts 3rd grade next week. Every day he gets is because of you. Cassidy stood. He gets them because he's a fighter, like his dad. She addressed the class. This is why we fly, not for medals, not for glory, for this, for fathers and sons who get to have more time together, for little boys who beat cancer and get to play baseball. Ethan waved at the class. Several students waved back. Remember that, Cassidy said, when you're scared, when it seems impossible, when every voice says turn back, remember there's an 8-year-old kid who gets to grow up because someone didn't quit. The bell rang. Class dismissed. We'll continue Monday. Study for the navigation exam. The students filed out, many stopping to talk to Ethan and David. Brennan lingered. Ma'am, I got news. Good news. I passed the initial screening for SOAR selection. I report to Fort Campbell in 3 months. Cassidy smiled. Outstanding, Brennan. Your father would be proud. I hope so. I'm trying to be half the man he was. You're already more than that. You're the man he wanted you to become. Brennan nodded, fighting emotion. Thank you, ma'am, for everything. After he left, Garrett approached. Got something for you, the old colonel said. He handed her a manila envelope. Cassidy opened it. Inside was an official Army document. Reinstatement orders. Chief Warrant Officer 3 Cassidy Thornton. Active duty status. 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. They're reinstating me. Full active duty, retroactive removal of medical retirement, full back pay, and a promotion to CW4 pending. Garrett smiled. Turns out when you save a kid on live television and 5 million people watch you fly a crippled helicopter like it's a training exercise, the Army pays attention. Cassidy stared at the orders, at the second chance she'd never asked for but had earned anyway. What if I don't want it? Then you tear it up and keep teaching. But if you do want it, Garrett leaned closer. There's a mission. Montana. Hunter lost in the mountains. Storm moving in. Sound familiar? Cassidy's phone buzzed. A text from Wyatt. You in? She looked at Garrett, at the orders, at Ethan playing with his father, at the second chance the world had given her. When do we leave? 2 hours. Cassidy gathered her materials, put on her flight jacket, the one that said Blaze. Let's go save someone. She walked out into the Alabama sunshine. A Black Hawk sat on the pad rotors already turning. Garrett climbed in the co-pilot seat. Cassidy took the left seat, the pilot's seat. She strapped in, put on her helmet, ran through the pre-flight. Her hands on the controls were steady, no shaking, no fear. Just the quiet confidence of someone who'd been to hell, walked back out, and wasn't afraid to go again. She pulled collective. The Black Hawk lifted into the sky, and Cassidy Thornton, the angel of death, flew toward another storm. Because that's what angels do. They fly into darkness so others can see light. They pay prices no one else will pay. They give second chances and hope, and they never ever stop. Far below at the Shattered Wing Bar in San Diego, Maggie added a new photograph to the wall of heroes. It showed a woman with scars on her face surrounded by warriors wearing a flight jacket that said Blaze. Underneath, in careful handwriting, Chief Warrant Officer Cassidy Thornton, the angel of death. She walked into fire so others could live. 160th SOAR. Night stalkers don't quit. And every night when young Marines and sailors and airmen walked in looking for a drink and a story, Maggie would point to that photo, and she'd tell them about the woman who was mocked and humiliated, who had every reason to quit, but who flew into a storm anyway, who saved a little boy with cancer, who proved that scars aren't weakness. They're proof you survived, proof you paid the price, proof you were willing to burn so others could live. That's Chief Cassidy Thornton, Maggie would say, her voice filled with pride. The baddest pilot who ever lived, and she drinks here. And the young warriors would look at that photo, at those scars, at the flight jacket and the determined eyes, and they'd understand what it meant to be a hero, not someone without fear, but someone who flies anyway.